So, I know you're going to look at the title and think it's a bit odd that I'm putting these two events in the same video. But the reason I'm putting them in the same video is because both of these events were birthday treats for myself. I want to talk about both of these events, but I didn't want to cut it down into 2 videos. So instead, I'm going to put it into one video and talk about what I like and didn't like about The Farmer's Dog, and then give a review on James Gunn's Superman movie. We'll start off with The Farmer's Dog. For those of you who don't know, The Farmer's Dog is a pub owned by TV presenter Jeremy Clarkson. Now, Jeremy Clarkson is either you love him or hate him type of person. Personally, I love him. I think he's hilarious and just an overall knobhead. He can have controversial view on things, but I never feel like he's being serious or acting like he's important like Piers Morgan. If you live in the UK, you're probably familiar with the Amazon Prime show Clarkson's Farm. This is where Jeremy Clarkson shows how difficult it is to be a farmer. If you ever get the chance to, I highly recommend this show. Not only is it just downright hilarious, but it also shows how difficult it is to be a farmer. And because of the show, it's giving people a lot more respect to farming. In season 4 of the show, Jeremy Clarkson takes it upon himself to buy a pup. This pup will turn out to be The Farmer's Dog, which is where I went with my mum and my mum's partner Lee. So the idea at first was to go and have a drink at the pub. Then around the area, go inside the tent where they have a little shop, a butcher's called Hops and Crops. After that, have a meal at the food truck called The Farmer's Puppy, and then go to the main shop which you see in the first season of the show. When we were on our way to the pub, I was thinking this might be really chaotic. Not just because I thought it was going to be a tourist attraction, because people are most likely going to want an opportunity to meet Jeremy Clarkson and anyone else who was on the show. But also in the last episode of season 4, the place was just chaos. It was absolutely insane to watch how many things went wrong in this pub. But obviously I wanted to go anyway, so we went and I just hoped for the best. And you know what? Hoping for the best really paid off. Not only was the place not chaotic, but I don't think I've ever seen a pub so well organised in my entire life. We had to wait in a queue to get inside the pub because a lot of people just want to get a drink and then take a picture of the famous tractor that Richard Hammond croned for Jeremy Clarkson. You had to stand in either 2 queues. One of them was for people who didn't reserve, and the other one is for people who did reserve. Luckily, we didn't have to wait for too long, so when we got into the pub, it looked amazing. The layout of this place was absolutely beautiful, and the landscape of the Cogswolds just made it. The lighting of the pub did make the tractor look a bit disco-y, but not so much as it didn't take you out of it. Most of the staff that worked there were very friendly and helpful. The gentleman that was at the front door of the pub letting people in was very chatty and very friendly, and the staff around the tent were very friendly as well. However, I can't really say the same about the 2 men around the bar serving us pints. The attitude they gave was less customer service friendly and more, let's do this to get a good paycheck. And I say this as someone who works in customer service. I can tell the difference between someone who's enthusiastic and someone who's looking for an easy way to make money. But apart from that, the staff were all great. When we got inside the pub, we ordered our drinks. I brought a Hawkston lager, Mum bought a scent wine, and Lee had a Hawkston cider.
Here he goes, he's having his first drink of his Hawkston lager.
Clarkson beer.
Right, give us your opinion then.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah.
Good job, Clarkson. We decided to sit outside with our drinks so we could take in the view, and it was beautiful. However, we got a bit distracted by some new friends. Oh, Lee's making a friend.
Yeah, there's loads of them.
Where's it gone?
I don't know. It's after my cider. It's not having any of it, it's too expensive.
How come it likes your cider and not any of our drinks? I feel a bit left out.
No, it will, don't worry. You won't get left out.
The wasps were probably the biggest problem with the place. Not that it was anyone's fault, but there were a lot of wasps getting in our drinks and so on. It became really annoying. Lee found another thing to complain about as well.
Yeah.
What was your issue?
My issue I've got with being here is that they don't take cash. There's nothing wrong with British money. This is a British pub, we should be able to use British money.
You communist. After we finished our drinks, we went over to the tent where the hops and crops, the farmer's puppy, and the little shop was. Now, I mentioned earlier that we planned to go to the main shop in Diddley Scott Farm. The shop that was in the tent was not the main shop as you saw in the show. But it was around this time we started thinking whether or not we should go to the main shop. But a sweet old couple that were right in front of us overheard us talking about it, and apparently they went to the main shop before they came to the pub. They told us that the queue to the main shop will be about 2 hours long. Not just that, but it was only a small shop that sells the exact same things in the shop that we were waiting for at the moment. Not to mention it would have been around a 2-hour drive just to get there, and you can't even see the farm. So that would have been at least around 4 hours and 10 minutes just driving around, waiting to look and maybe buy stuff for things we've already seen. We then decided to not go to the main shop and just stay around the pub. But when we got to the shop, they had some really nice souvenirs. I bought myself a bottle opener with a goat's horn attached to it, a wooden spoon with the handle saying "there's been a terrible mix-up," which I thought was pretty funny, a candle that apparently smells like Jeremy Clarkson's bollocks, and this t-shirt that said "Diddley Squat Farm, I am a We then waited in the queue for the farmer's puppy, and when we were waiting in the queue, a couple of new friends came to say hi. This has become the plague of ladybugs, so I've got one, apparently Lee has one as well.
Yeah, where's your ladybug?
It's on the floor? Okay, well, apparently this is now the plague of ladybugs. Let's get the focus up. There we go.
Better than wasps.
Hello, Mrs. Ladybug. The farmer's puppy didn't really have a lot on the menu. From what I saw, there were only 2 things on the menu. One of them was burgers and chips, and the other one was a lamb kebab. Unfortunately, the lamb kebab was all sold out, so we had to have burgers and chips instead. To make sure we knew when our food was ready, they gave us a little beeper so we could just sit outside wherever we wanted and waited for our food to be ready. We ordered some drinks as well. This time, I got myself the Caleb cider, named after Caleb Cooper, who was the farm manager of Diddley Scott Farm. Lee got himself a lager with elderflower shandy, and Mum got herself another scent wine. We found this little stall area, but there were more wasps there than ever now. So we moved over to another table where our beeper went off. We got our meal and we enjoyed our burgers and chips, and I have got to say, if you ever decide to go to the Farmer's Dog and if you want something to eat, I highly recommend the Farmer's Puppy. Now, I didn't try the food that was in the Farmer's Dog since we didn't reserve a table, so I can't give you an honest opinion about the food that was in the pub. But the burgers they sold in the Farmer's Puppy were to die for. After we finished our meal, we went back inside the tent to have a look at hops and crops, where I brought myself a packet of British pork sausages, and also brought myself 2 cans of Hawkston lager, and a Hawkston beer mug. Overall, I had a really great time. It was a wonderful pub with a real love of farming. You can really see the effort they put into this place from when it all started when Jeremy first opened the pub. It's really built itself up and it's going really well. I was really impressed with how well organised everything was. And if I ever get the chance to, I would absolutely go back there again. Maybe do a little bit more next time, but we'll see. There is a queue for the men's toilets. I've got nothing to add, I just think this is funny. And there's Lee waiting with them. Poor unfortunate soul. The next day, I went to go and see James Gunn's Superman. Now, I will be talking about spoilers in this video, so if you don't want the movie spoiled, I highly recommend coming back after you've seen the movie. I have to admit, when this movie was first announced, I wasn't really excited. Not because I didn't think the movie was going to be good, but just because we've seen the story of Superman multiple times. A couple of them quite recently. The superhero formula is getting a bit tiresome, and I just thought this was going to be a case of another attempt to recreate a moment, like when the first Iron Man movie kicked off the MCU. Even with James Gunn's name attached to the project as writer and director, that still didn't excite me. But then when the first trailer came out, this didn't look too bad. I was totally sold on Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane and Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. However, I wasn't really totally sold on David Corenswet as Superman just from the first trailer. There were a lot of shots of him just moping and looking really sad, and shots of his face that looked a bit weird. But once we got to see more of him in the second trailer, I was totally convinced. There were a lot more shots of him smiling and just feeling like Superman. From the voice, to the lines, to even his looks. Granted, I didn't think he was going to be as good as Christopher Reeves, because obviously no one can, but I thought Corin Swed looked like he would at least do a decent job. The S on the symbol also put me off as well. I don't know why the symbol was a cross between the original one and the Kingdom Come one, considering that's a more older, darker Superman, and this is more of a younger, light-hearted Superman. And while it's still a bit weird to me, it didn't really bother me too much. This movie came out on July 11th, which was 2 days before my birthday. So my friend Roland treated me to see Superman. At my local Odeon cinema, they were selling these really cool Superman cups that I wanted. And when I got up to the desk to buy one, the man said I couldn't buy the cup unless I buy the popcorn bucket with it. Unfortunately, I don't really like popcorn, but lucky enough Roland did. So I bought the cup for myself and the popcorn bucket for Roland.
And let me tell you something, if you're looking to get a score with the chicks, this thing is quite the pussy magnet.
So what you could probably tell is that I had doubts at first, but the more I saw of the movie, the more I started to get excited. And after seeing the movie for myself, I can honestly say, I really liked it. I do have my own criticisms, but I do want to stress, I really liked this movie. A lot of people who watched this movie before I did described this movie as a longer episode of Superman the Animated Series. And I can see where they're coming from. This definitely felt like a longer version of Superman the Animated Series, and again, I'm using this as a positive. Superman the Animated Series is my favourite Superman series, so I got excited with the idea that this was getting adapted into it. James Gunn apparently took a lot of inspiration from the graphic novel of Superman All-Stars with his visuals, and I can see that in the final product. This movie is really colourful and really nice to look at. And it was a nice breeze of fresh air from the really dark and depressing version of Superman we got from Zack Snyder. The production of this movie was honestly incredible. A lot of little details in the camera work and the directing I really appreciated. One example being when Clark was watching the TV in this shot. It cuts to his mother. The camera then quickly frames into him, and then ended with a panned out shot with him taking his clothes off and then getting into his costume. Or just this shot of Clark and Lois kissing. Like how it's just a shoulder shot of David Corenswet, just panning over still on the shoulders, until Lois sits on the table, and then it becomes a close-up middle shot. I don't know what it is, but I just really like shots like that. And there are just a lot of really good shots like this in the movie. You can really see James Gunn put a lot of effort into making this movie look as good and smooth as possible. All of the actors in the movie do a really good job as well, especially David Corenswet as Superman. It takes no effort to believe that he is the Man of Steel, and that this is a Superman who actually cares about not just people, but everyone. Like, there's a bit in the movie where he saves a squirrel. Like, that is Superman. Just taking the time for the little things. It's not always about the big, punchy, cool looking battles. It's just the little things that make us believe that he cares. However, that doesn't really extend onto the characters in this movie that are from Krypton. There are a couple of times in this movie where Superman just looks annoyed at Krypto. Now, Krypto is a hyperactive dog, so he is going to get a bit naughty at times. But at the end of the movie, Supergirl shows up, played by Millie Alcock, and he doesn't even smile or has much to say when he sees her. He just looks a bit annoyed that she's even there because, I don't know, she's an alcoholic? Rachel Brosnahan was perfect for Lois Lane. She's probably my favourite interpretation of Lois Lane so far. Just by her look alone, it just feels like she's just leaped out of the comics, but still manages to give the no-nonsense reporter who would do anything to get the good story, and not being a damsel in distress who needs to be saved all the time. There's even a bit in the movie where she helps Mr. Terrific save Superman. But out of all of the casting choices in this movie, the one I was most excited to see was Nicholas Holtz as Lex Luthor. Not just because I think he's a really good actor who will do a really good job in the role, but every scene that he is in, he is smacking the shit out of Jesse Eisenberg's performance as Lex Luthor. Just saying, if you want Lex Luthor done right, this is how you do it. Threatening, charming, diabolical businessman, who at sometimes can be a bit goofy. There's even some moments in the movie where Lex does some pretty evil stuff that I was like, whoa, dude, too far. A lot of people say that Lex doesn't really have a good reason to hate Superman, but I respectfully disagree. To me, the way it's being interpreted was that Lex is a racist against aliens. That's literally all the motivation I need. He literally refers to Superman as an it instead of a man.
He's not a man. He's an it.
We don't need an in-depth explanation on why he hates him. And I think the idea of him hating aliens was pretty well done, until you hear the reason at the end. But I will say, even though I thought Nicholas Hoult did a really good job, he's not my favourite Lex Luthor. My favourite Lex is still Kevin Spacey. But then again, that might just be because I can believe his Lex Luthor is a sick and horrible person because, well, Kevin Spacey is a sick and horrible person. So yeah, sick and horrible person playing sick and horrible person. The other standouts for me were Maria Gabriela de Faria as the engineer, Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, Anthony Carrigan as Metamorpho, Ed Cathegi as Mr. Terrific, who I really hope gets his own movie one day. And despite not having a lot of screen time, Michaela Hoover as Cat Grant, Beck Bennett as Steve Lombard, Wendell Pierce as Perry White, Sarah Sontayo as Mitch Teschmacher! And for once, Skylar Gisondo did not fucking suck. I'm sure he's a nice guy in real life, but if you've seen movies like Vacation or Night at Museum 3, he was just awful in them.
Don't do that! I could have died!
I don't know if this is just because he's had more experience now, or because he's getting older, or because he was cast in a much more suitable role for his talents this time, or just because he had a much better director, but he was really well chosen for Jimmy Olsen. But I don't know why they made Jimmy Olsen the sex symbol in the movie though. He seems to be the guy that can get any girl he wants, because every young girl in the movie just wants to sit on his face. I'm not saying he's a bad looking chap, but I don't think he's attracted enough to win people over by his looks. Isabella Monset was good as Hawkgirl, but she felt a bit underused. You kind of forgot she was even in the same room as the other characters, which is a real shame, because if you've seen movies like Dora and the Lost City of Gold, and Season 2 of The Last of Us, Isabella Monset is a really great actress who can leave a really strong impression. And I really hate it when movies or TV shows underuse a really talented performer. Sort of like what they did with Simon Pegg in The Boys. Just feels like a waste of talent. This movie does trust you that you already know the story of Superman, because it doesn't waste any time with the backstory. It just goes straight into it, and I'm glad they didn't waste any time seeing the backstory again. But there are a couple of things I will say. One is, I could have gone without the text on the screen about how Superman presented himself to the world, and how he lost the battle to this villain 3 minutes before we saw him, and that it cut straight to him falling into the snow that you saw in the trailer. But as soon as Superman does get back up to fight, we are immediately introduced to him, without any context to who he is and what he is doing. Now, eventually we do know who he is, but it felt a lot of it was cut out for whatever reason. Now, this movie isn't a choppy mess or anything like that, but there were a couple of moments where I was like, what is happening between this and that? For an example, there's a moment in the movie where Lex breaks into the Fortress of Solitude. To distract Superman, he sends Kaiju. It gets let out by these two guards, and it's just a baby alien that just runs off. One of the guards dramatically says, "It will get bigger." And we just cut immediately to the next day of the Kaiju just huge and about to step on a dog. Like, I feel like there was a lot that we didn't see or got told. How did it get big within one night? And if Lex wanted a distraction, why did he get a monster that would just grow overnight instead of a monster that would just grow in seconds? Or even get a monster that's already huge? He had access to another dimension. He was able to keep a bunch of other aliens as prisoners that could have been useful. Why didn't he just do that? There's even this bit in the movie where Clark lets Lois interview him as Superman, and he talks about how he stopped a war by pinning the president of Biravia to a cactus. Now, what was being described sounded really cool, and all I was thinking was, can we see it? But no, it's only told to us instead of just seeing it happen. Superman does really seem to care about that war that was going on, but we never see how Superman stopped a war between these two nations. And it doesn't seem like Superman made too much of a difference, considering the president shit talks him in the media before the interview. So him being pinned to a cactus obviously didn't scare him too much. There were a couple of times in the movie where the CGI did look a bit rubbery, and could have used a bit more work. Now, for most of the movie, the CGI is really good. Like, Krypto himself looks incredible. Probably one of the best CGI dogs I've ever seen. But there were other times, specifically in the action scenes, that could have been cleaned up a bit. Now, it didn't take me out of the movie, but it's just something I feel like I need to bring up. Most of the plot points in the movie I was fine with, like with Superman being interviewed by Lois. That led a hole into their relationship. Jimmy trying to gather information on Lex. The Justice team with all of their plot points were done really well. But there's one plot point which I think is going to split a lot of people. There's a bit in the movie where Lex breaks into the Fortress of Solitude and hacks into the system. Lex manipulates the media into thinking that the message that Superman got from his Kryptonian parents was to destroy humans and that Superman is grooming the world. Now at first I thought this was just Lex manipulating the message to make Superman look bad in the media, but no, that doesn't seem to be the case. Superman by the end of the movie still believes the message from his Kryptonian parents was to destroy humans, which just seems really out of character for Jor-El. Jor-El didn't want world domination or to conquer. He was just a scientist on Krypton who tried to warn everyone about the planet's destruction and was scoffed at. He then did everything he could to save his own son. He didn't even know about Earth until he sent his only son away. They just turned him into General Zod. At first I thought this was just Lex twisting the message to make the media turn on Superman, but no. It turned out this is what Jor-El wanted. Not even Supergirl, who comes in at the end, who would know about Jor-El, didn't even say anything about him. And Superman just accepts it. Especially when it's been brought to you by the person who hates you the most and has already lied about you. A lot of people seem to be comparing this to an episode of Smallville, where Clark assumes that Jor-El sent him to conquer.
I think I was sent here to conquer.
But no. Clark even says that he's probably reading the text wrong.
I'm sure I'm reading it wrong.
This was just an assumption that he made. Jor-El never says that he wants him to conquer. He just says that it's time to accept your destiny.
It is time to accept your destiny.
Sure, there are times in Smallville where Jor-El can be a bit of a dick, but you never get the impression that he wants Clark to destroy humans. Overall, even though this movie had some issues, I do not regret seeing it. I thought it was a great example of a fun, enjoyable popcorn movie. Sure, I had issues with some plot points, and there were things that obviously needed a bit of tweaking, but that's a fun, enjoyable popcorn movie to me. And I'm looking forward to seeing what James Gunn does with this franchise in the future. I know he's probably in charge of writing and producing a lot of other DC projects, but I don't think he's going to be directing all of them. But we'll just see what happens, and I do hope to see more of this interpretation of Superman. And I'm giving this movie a high 7 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little video. I'm sorry I had to stop with my scheduled uploads of my Let's Plays, but as you probably saw on my community post, I've been quite busy recently. Working 6 days a week, balancing 2 different jobs, moving out of my mum's house to get my own apartment and living more independently. Until I can get those sorted, I'm afraid that uploads would have to pause for the time being. Things like me moving out and my real life jobs are more important, and I need to focus more on that until I can get settled down. I just wanted to get this video out as soon as possible so I can give you all something over nothing. I hope you all understand, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe for more videos, and if you want me to do more movie reviews, then let me know in the comments. I used to do movie reviews on another channel that I had to stop because I just wasn't feeling passionate enough about it. I sort of had a similar style to people like Jeremy Johnson and Chris Duckman, but ever since I've been making my videos more scripted, it's made things a little bit more easier. So if you do like this type of reviewing style, please let me know in the comments and I might consider doing more reviews, as well as other content as well. I do have plans for more content once I get things sorted. Like, I also react to trailers that interest me. I talk about internet drama sometimes, vlogs like the one you just saw, mostly Let's Plays, etc. I also have a second channel called Don't Cry Just Laugh, where I do a couple of comedy sketches with a couple of friends or just myself. But if you made it this far into the video, I thank you for watching and make sure you keep yourself safe.